December 11th, 2008. A 70-year-old man in a $5,000 suit walks into his Manhattan penthouse and tells his two sons the truth. It's all been one big lie, he says. His voice is calm, almost too calm. Those 7 words would unravel the largest financial fraud in human history. $65 billion gone. Retirement accounts, college funds, life savings obliterated. And the man who did it, he wasn't some offshore criminal mastermind. He was your neighbor, your friend, a guy you trusted with everything. His name was Bernie Madoff. And this is the story of how one psychopath weaponized trust itself. But here's what nobody tells you. Bernie didn't just steal money. He stole futures, stole dreams. And the scariest part, the system that let him do it is still running today. Bernard Lawrence Madoff didn't look like a criminal. That was the entire point. Born in Queens, New York in 1938, Bernie was the son of Polish immigrants who ran a small plumbing supply business. Nothing fancy, nothing glamorous, just blue-collar grit and American ambition. After graduating from Hofstra University in 1960, Bernie had $5,000 to his name and a dream: Wall Street. He started Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC with money he'd saved from installing sprinkler systems and working as a lifeguard. $5,000. By 2008, his firm was managing over $65 billion. From lifeguard to legend, the American dream incarnate. But Bernie had a secret weapon. It wasn't intelligence, it wasn't connections, it was something far more powerful: relatability. While other Wall Street titans wore their wealth like armor, Bernie played the humble genius. He drove a modest Lexus. He lived in a nice but not ostentatious apartment. He gave to charity. He served on non-profit boards. He was charming, soft-spoken, and grandfatherly. People didn't just trust Bernie Madoff, they loved him. And Bernie knew exactly how to weaponize that love. Here's where it gets sinister. Madoff's investment strategy was brilliantly simple on paper. The split strike conversion. It's a legitimate options strategy that generates steady, modest returns. Think 4 to 12% annually. Nothing explosive, nothing suspicious, just reliable, boring growth. The kind of returns that retirees dream about. But there was one problem. Bernie wasn't actually doing it. Instead, he was running what's called a Ponzi scheme, named after Charles Ponzi, who pioneered the con in the 1920s. The mechanics are terrifyingly simple. You take money from new investors and use it to pay fake returns to old investors. As long as more money keeps flowing in than flowing out, the illusion holds. It's not an investment, it's a magic trick. And Bernie Madoff was David Copperfield. Here's the truly diabolical part. Bernie didn't hunt for victims, he made them come to him. His strategy was called exclusivity. You couldn't just invest with Madoff, you had to be invited. You had to be referred by someone already in the club. This created a psychological trap called scarcity bias. When something is rare or hard to get, we assume it's valuable. Hedge funds begged to get into Madoff's portfolio. Country clubs whispered his name like a secret password. He turned investing into a status symbol. But this wasn't just about ego. It was about insulation. By only accepting referrals from trusted clients, Bernie created a human shield of credibility. If you questioned him, you weren't just doubting Bernie, you were doubting your friend who referred you, your brother-in-law, your rabbi. The social pressure to stay silent was immense. The operation itself was a masterclass in compartmentalization. Madoff's firm occupied 3 floors of the iconic Lipstick Building in Midtown Manhattan. The 18th and 19th floors ran the legitimate market-making business, buying and selling stocks for other brokers. It was profitable, it was legal, and it employed his sons Mark and Andrew, who genuinely believed they were running a clean operation. But the 17th floor? That was the inner sanctum, the fraud factory. Access was restricted. Employees signed NDAs, and this is where Bernie created the fake statements, the fabricated trades, the phantom portfolios. He used an ancient computer system running on DOS technology from the 1980s because it was harder to audit and easier to manipulate. While the rest of Wall Street was using Bloomberg terminals and cutting-edge software, Bernie was running his empire on digital dinosaurs. And the statements, they were works of art, professional, detailed, convincing. Every month, investors received documents showing their returns, their holdings, their growth. It all looked legitimate, but none of it was real. Every number was fiction. Every trade was phantom. The entire thing was a performance, and Bernie was the director, the producer, and the lead actor. And it worked. For decades. Now here's where this story gets infuriating. Bernie Madoff wasn't a criminal mastermind hiding in the shadows. He was operating in broad daylight. The red flags weren't just visible, they were waving directly in front of the people whose job it was to stop him. Red flag number 1, the returns. 4 to 12% annually, every single year. No down months, no volatility. no correlation to market crashes. In 2008, when the S&P 500 lost 37%, Madoff's fund reported positive returns. That's not skill, that's not genius, that's impossible. Any legitimate financial analyst should have immediately flagged this as statistically absurd. Red flag number 2. The auditor. Madoff's firm managed $65 billion, but his auditor was a 3-person accounting firm operating out of a strip mall in New York. The firm consisted of one 78-year-old accountant, his secretary, and an intern. They had no peer review, no oversight, no credibility. This is like Jeff Bezos getting his taxes done at H&R Block. Red flag number 3. The whistleblower. His name was Harry Markopoulos, a financial analyst who figured out Madoff was a fraud in under 5 minutes. Not 5 days, 5 minutes. He sent detailed reports to the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the agency that's supposed to protect investors in 2000, 2001, and 2005. The SEC did nothing. They met with Madoff twice and walked away satisfied. Why? Because Bernie was charming, because he was respected, because he had been the chairman of NASDAQ, for God's sake. The system didn't fail, the system bowed. But the pressure was building, and every Ponzi scheme has the same fatal flaw. It requires infinite growth, and nothing grows forever. September 2008. Lehman Brothers collapses. Bear Stearns is gone. AIG is on life support. The global financial system is in free fall, and suddenly everyone wants their money back. This is the nightmare scenario for a Ponzi scheme. When the market crashes, investors panic and withdraw funds. But Bernie didn't have the money. He never had the money. It was all smoke and mirrors, spreadsheets and lies. By November, redemption requests hit $7 billion. Bernie could pay. On December 10, 2008, Bernie called a meeting with his sons, Mark and Andrew. They worked in the legitimate side of his business, the market-making operation, and had no idea what was happening on the investment floor. Bernie's voice was shaking. He told them the investment advisory business was all just one big lie, a giant Ponzi scheme, $65 billion, all fake. His sons were horrified. The next morning they contacted a lawyer. By that afternoon, federal agents arrested Bernie Madoff at his penthouse apartment. He was 70 years old. He had been running the con for at least 17 years. Maybe longer. Nobody knows for sure. And when the dust settled, the damage was biblical. Numbers can't capture the devastation. $65 billion is an abstraction. Let me make it real. Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor and Nobel Peace Prize winner, lost his entire foundation's money, $15 million meant for genocide education. Gone. Wiesel later said, "We thought he was God. We trusted everything in his hands." The irony was crushing. A man who survived the ultimate betrayal of humanity fell victim to a con artist. Mort Zuckerman, owner of the New York Daily News, lost tens of millions. Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick lost most of their savings. Steven Spielberg's Wunderkinder Foundation lost millions meant for children's charities. The New York Mets owners, the Wilpon family, lost hundreds of millions and nearly had to sell the team. But the real victims weren't celebrities. They were retirees, teachers, small business owners, people who had spent 50 years saving, investing, trusting. One man, Thierry de la Ville-Houchet, a French aristocrat who had invested his family's fortune with Madoff, locked himself in his Madison Avenue office and slit his wrists. He left a suicide note. "Bernie Madoff destroyed my life." Another victim, William Foxton, a British Army veteran, invested his pension with Madoff. When the fraud was revealed, he couldn't take it. He killed himself. His son later said, "My father was a proud man. He couldn't face the shame." Then there was Norma Hill, a Florida retiree who lost her entire life savings, $800,000. At 79 years old, she had to go back to work as a grocery store clerk just to afford medication. "I trusted him," she told reporters, her voice breaking. Everyone did. The Shapiro family lost $17 million, 3 generations of savings wiped out overnight. They had to sell their home, cancel college plans for their grandchildren. The family patriarch died 6 months later. His wife said the stress killed him. These weren't just financial losses, they were psychological executions. Bernie Madoff didn't just steal money. He stole dignity. He stole security. He stole the future. He stole the ability to trust. And the cruelest irony, many of his victims were Jewish philanthropists, people from his own community. Bernie sat on the boards of Yeshiva University and the American Jewish Congress. He donated to Holocaust charities. He prayed at the same synagogues as his victims. He exploited religious and cultural trust. He turned social bonds into weapons. He didn't just betray strangers. He betrayed his tribe. On June 29, 2009, Bernie Madoff stood in a Manhattan courtroom. Judge Denny Chin called the crime extraordinarily evil and sentenced him to 150 years in prison. The maximum possible sentence. Bernie was 71. He would die in prison. The courtroom erupted in applause. But here's the question nobody wants to ask. Did justice actually happen? Bernie went to jail. But what about the system that enabled him? The SEC that ignored warnings for 9 years, the feeder funds that funneled billions into Madoff's scheme and took massive fees without doing due diligence, the half accountants, the lawyers, the compliance officers who looked the other way. Most of them faced no consequences. Some paid fines, some settled, but nobody else went to prison. The infrastructure of the fraud remained intact, just waiting for the next Bernie. And here's the part that should terrify you. Madoff's strategy wasn't unique. It wasn't complex. It was just trust plus time. And in 2025, that formula is still running on Wall Street, in crypto exchanges, in private equity funds. The names change, the schemes get more sophisticated, but the con remains the same. Bernie Madoff died in federal prison on April 14, 2021. He was 82 years old. In his final interviews, he showed no real remorse. He blamed the victims for being greedy. He blamed the SEC for being incompetent. He blamed everyone but himself. His wife, Ruth, lost everything. Their sons, Mark and Andrew, were destroyed. Mark hanged himself in his Manhattan apartment on the 2nd anniversary of his father's arrest. Andrew died of cancer in 2014, estranged from his father. The Madoff family name became synonymous with betrayal. But here's the real legacy. Bernie Madoff proved that the biggest threat to your financial security isn't the economy. It isn't inflation or recessions or market crashes. It's trust. Misplaced, weaponized, exploited trust. Because Bernie wasn't an outsider. He was an insider. He was the chairman of NASDAQ. He was on charity boards. He was your friend's financial advisor. And that's why he succeeded. We assume that people in positions of power and respect have earned that trust. But Bernie proved that trust is just another currency, and he counterfeited it for decades. So the next time someone offers you guaranteed returns, ask yourself why. The next time exclusivity feels like a privilege, ask yourself who benefits. And the next time everyone around you trusts someone, ask yourself, what if they're all wrong? Because Bernie Madoff stole $65 billion, but the real theft was bigger. He stole the belief that the system works, that the gatekeepers are watching, that justice is inevitable. And the scariest part, he almost got away with it. If this story made you angry, good. If it made you paranoid, even better. Because the next Bernie Madoff is out there right now, building trust, creating exclusivity, printing fake statements. The question is, will we catch him before he destroys another generation of dreams? Subscribe to Wealth Decoded, because the only defense against deception is information, and we're just getting started.